Welcome to another episode of the Vital MX post-race show. The first month of 2025 Monster Energy AMA Supercross is in the rearview mirror. We are heading east now that the first Triple Crown of 2025 is also done. That was held in Glendale's State Farm Stadium, one of the most popular stops on the tour, one of the better tracks of the year, and all of this culminated in yet another fantastic round of Monster Energy AMA Supercross. Thank you to Decal Works, Fox Racing, Yoshimura, and Yamaha Motor USA for their support of the Vital MX post-race show. Without them, we would not be sat here talking about all of the wonderful gifts that this season has given us thus far. I'm your host, Lewis Phillips, as per usual, joined by Michael Lindsay. Hello.
Hello.
How was your weekend?
Fantastic. I barely worked. I actually went to hang out with my girlfriend and watch the race. I shot a bit on Friday, and I got to enjoy Glendale the way Glendale should be. Again, enjoyed. Me and you talked about it's one of our favorite rounds on the schedule, to the point I was sitting there the whole time going, you know what? I would love another Glendale later in the season. Like, give me Glendale like round 2 or 3, and then give me a West Coast round of Glendale at like, it didn't sit down. Give me like round 16, 14, somewhere in the schedule. I could go to Glendale twice a year and be pretty happy.
Well, if you're not going to work, then they won't do it because fucking it's a waste of time. We don't listen to the fans. We listen to the industry. So are you a fan?
Well, now I'm a fan for the weekend. Now you don't care about my opinion at all.
Well, I don't think anyone cares anyway.
Is it? It's hard to go to the race and not work after doing it your whole life. Like when the racing's happening is one thing. The rest of the time I was walking around the pits with severe ADHD, just like I need to be doing something this is not computing.
Well, yeah, it's just you feel at a loose end, don't you?
Oh, I felt like I was what's that whole riders talk about the feeling of like missing out was really killing me. Like I should be getting this shot. I should be doing this. I mean, I still run over and do something real quick every once in a while, but yeah, I was having major.
I feel like you're angling towards me saying, well done for not working. Seems like it was a great effort on your behalf. Seems like you really had to dig deep. Yeah. So impressive, and we're all very proud of that.
Thank you.
You managing to pull through.
Thank you.
Do we want to start with a track or go straight into the racing?
Do we need to track again? I don't know. Track. I love Glendale. Same old every year. Big rhythm lanes, big floor. It makes me, I don't know. On one hand, I probably shouldn't complain because you need diversity, but man, makes me hate some of the college stadiums we go to, like San Diego and Salt Lake, that have really small floors. Because God, the Glendale track is awesome.
Yeah, I said to someone, and this may be an extravagant viewpoint, but St. Louis 2009 is the benchmark for me for Supercross.
The Ostrana track.
Dare I say that Glendale 2025 will be similarly imprinted on my mind as, wow, that was a good track. And I said to this person, a former Supercross winner, that between St. Louis 2009 and Glendale 2025, I'm not even sure there is one track
that measures it.
Yes, but multiple options, lines changing in the middle of the race, which is brilliant. You never quite knew what the fastest line was, which is rare with Dartfish and everything that goes on nowadays. I felt as though it was a smash hit. The riders, not so much, which really surprised me. Hunter told me that basically I was insane, so that was great. Malcolm told me that it was 50-50, which I think was his nice way of saying I was insane. Chase, of course, agreed with me 100%. So one rider was also a fan of Glendale, but genuinely I thought it was really good, and I feel like that has set a benchmark of what we want every single week. Although it is once again worth pointing out that Dirt Works, or the SMX League, as I guess we are now meant to refer to that, have knocked it out of the park every single week this year. I've loved the tracks, and you know what? During practice in Glendale, I was so happy with the Glendale track that I looked up Tampa, because I was like, well, maybe our nice little run is going to end here shortly. Tampa looks great as well. This is really a renaissance for the SMX League track crew.
I mean, the tracks have been so cookie cutter for years. Let's take the two longest rhythm lanes. As basic it is, having a rhythm lane that is all 3-foot singles was amazing. Just option wise, the fact that, if you clip a little, it ends up costing you those rhythm lanes. So watching the guys try to kind of balance, do I go for the consistent 2-3-3-2 or 3-3 quad and potentially screw up the quad at the end, which would definitely cost guys time if they had to go 3 single at the end, was great. And then the other rhythm lane that had the huge double across the start straight at the end, or sorry, triple, having multiple height 5s in it, some weird style on-offs, like just watching everybody try to navigate it. And the fact that even with the world's best riders, and like you said, Dartfish, it seemed like most guys did not figure out that last rhythm lane I mentioned until the main. Like after talking to Jordon Smith, like a lot of the 250 guys were struggling with the single over table and going 3-3. And he's like, hey, me and the team talked about it, and I never did this rhythm until the second lap of the main by going on, off, double, triple, because it was so consistent. And he goes, I just didn't want to blow it. And I was so uncomfortable on the other rhythm. Of course, watching like Webb and a couple of guys click out the big, Webb did it the sight lap for main one. He just got a gap in front of everybody and went and hucked the triple across the start straight.
The biggest complaint amongst the riders was the amount of wall jumps and the wall jumps going to flat. Chase said that he tweaked his thumb in practice just from landing so heavy. A few bikes had issues just from landing so heavy, wheels and whatnot.
A couple teams that bent axles. I think Roczen said they had to replace the races in the front bearing, like basically steering stem bearings in his bike after every single race.
Yeah, so okay, maybe that wasn't ideal, but still, it was a spectacular visual. Like, because there were multiple times where one rider would launch, one rider would get the power down early, and like, from a selling the sport standpoint, that is like a spectacular visual. So I get it from that point of view. I would have perhaps liked to see the roller before the finish stay in, because then the riders aren't launching to flat. But I actually don't know. I heard something along the lines of the SMX League wanted it taken out because they didn't want some riders going all the way over it, and they didn't want other riders not for safety, I think. I don't know. The funny
part is taking the landing out, because they did it early. 250 is the only person that tried it with Shock, and he nearly died off of it because Cody grabbed a handful in the face and like popped weird. And then 450s, Roczen did it really clean, and I think somebody said Anderson got it.
Went over the roller before the finish?
Over the roller before the finish. Yeah, they made it into the pocket of the roller.
Chase did it.
Yeah. So when they did it right, it looked clean. It had just enough give that it didn't look terrible. But by taking the roller out, it's the same as, like the whole tabletop versus double argument that can be the same length and it tricks your mind. The moment they took out the roller, all of a sudden everybody was launching to where the roller was anyways. So I don't know, very, very mute point. That was the one thing you could see certain guys like. I was impressed watching Chase, particularly his landing style off it. He was one of the best at landing and getting power back down where everybody would pop up and spin. I could see guys like Kenny Few that towards the end of the third main, you could just kind of tell that landing off it was starting to really wear on them, because just they started backing off how far they launched it, the times they would launch it. The body would collapse a little more on the landing. You could just see it wearing in them. And about third main, I started thinking about, I'm like, oh, these guys have got to be sick of this thing by now.
In the main events, Chase was definitely the only one really going long consistently. And he said after the race, he basically destroyed his body for absolutely no reason, because ultimately, what did it really gain? Not much. Although you could say it gained the red plate and a victory.
Well, what's crazy though is I went back and watched it, because I remember in person thinking like how far back he came from. The 250 main, like if you could hit the wall just perfect, just scrub it just right, and depending how your power was down when you landed, like it legitimately for some guys was a passing point. I think it's main 2, Deegan on Shimoda there. Like Deegan comes from like 15 feet back, scrubs the wall super weird, kind of pops weird and passes Joe doing it. I mean, Joe wasn't, even with Joe's hand, Joe wasn't like rolling it. He was still flat landing a bit, but if you could do it just right, he would work. But yeah, lap after lap, it was not enjoyable.
Well, let's get on to the riders and let's celebrate, first of all, our presenting sponsor, Decal Works, and yet another victory for Decal Works via Chase Sexton, and yet another week of printing red backgrounds for Chase Sexton, who has regained the red plate in the 450SX class. And hey, they're going to have to top up Juju's red plates for Arlington in a couple of weeks. Yes, Decal Works have a red plate in both classes, another 450 win, and I need to do a little creative thing here. So let me tell you that when Chase Sexton was soaring through the air off of the wall jumps, landing viciously and destroying his body, as he is quoted as saying, what he was not destroying was his Decal Works graphics, which remained robust and intact even at such supersonic speed. So maybe NASA should get in touch with Decal Works for their graphic decal needs, as well as NASA. Once NASA hang up the phone, you too can head to decalmx.com and make your order and get the similar treatment to Chase Sexton, Julien Beaumer, and others. So thank you to Decal Works for all of their support of us, and most importantly, Chase Sexton and Julien Beaumer and the others at KTM. So Chase won without winning a main event, or a race, I guess they're called now. I'll just do cliff notes from the interview. This is the easiest way to do it. He's terrible at the first lap. Doesn't know why. We agree, on the start, Chase is the most amped up rider. Agreed? I don't think I've seen anyone come close.
His little pre-race hype is, yes.
Okay, so we've identified the issue as that isn't good enough and he needs more. He said that what he started doing is shadow boxing on the way to the start, and on the way to the main events last night, or Saturday night, last night, AP was walking in front of him, and without AP knowing, Chase was shadow boxing him all the way to the start. So, okay, there's that.
Tampa, I'm just going to bring boxing gloves and let him and Justin Hill actually box then.
No, I've got a job now. So you should listen to the interview, which was also presented by Decal Works. I've got a job.
What's your job, to be the guy that holds up the hands?
No, I've got to hit him. I've got to punch him in the mouth on the start, which is great.
Oh, aggressive.
And I might just other riders as well, and then get kicked out.
I'm gonna film this.
But yeah, the first lap is a problem. Said that he needs blinkers, hazards, can't do the jumps, doesn't know why. What else was there? Destroyed body, jumping off the wall jumps. Didn't know. So quadding before the whoops. Roczen did that in the last timed qualification session. I swear I saw this.
Quadding before the whoops over the on-off?
Yeah.
Yeah, a bunch of guys did.
Okay. So in the first main event, when Chase was behind Roczen, yeah, Chase was going to the or was it? Oh, this is a problem with the Triple Crown. Either way, I was saying to people, I don't think Chase knows that quad is a line. Because it was so much quicker, but it was like I think Roczen was behind him maybe. And then when Roczen got ahead of him and Chase cottoned on, Chase then started doing it. So I said to him, why didn't you do that sooner? It was obviously faster. And he had no idea that people were doing it in the final qualifying session, which is really surprising in this day and age.
Yeah.
And then got mad at me because I didn't pass on the information. So that's also now my job as well.
That's all your fault.
So that's also something I've got to do from now on. So, so there's that, and then there's other stuff as well.
Is that considered fixed? I mean, media guy tampering with race results? What?
No, that's knowledge.
Careful.
Someone wants my knowledge. And then there's other stuff in the interviews, but that's the main cliff notes I have about Chase's race. So now you go and talk about Chase.
Just solid night overall. I mean, it's interesting to see. 2 years ago, Chase, I wouldn't have guessed winning Triple Crowns with very consistent results. It is interesting, just solid starts compared to the little bit up and down we still have with Eli's. Kenny's were solid to last one, but just overall seeing just a more complete Chase Sexton overall.
Starts were a bit of a concern in the first two main events, I want to say. Final main event, both he and Tomac, because he and Tomac were very close to the inside in the first two, and then together, like a unison, they both moved 3 or 4 gates to the outside of the box for the final main event. I felt as though, I didn't speak to Eli, but I looked at them both and I thought to myself, wow, they must be okay, we can do this. Because I always look at it, go to the inside, you have no confidence in your start. Go to the middle, you have confidence in your start. That's kind of my black and white viewpoint. Chase said he had no confidence and it was just a Hail Mary, which worked.
Was it Hail Mary to get away from that? Because a lot of guys that went inside got hung up on that disc.
Disc? Oh,
the disc style tough block on the inside, but it was like a weird disc shape one. My favorite though was the final start, watching Justin Cooper just roll the single on the inside. I laughed. I'm like, I can't believe nobody's done this all night.
What do you mean rolled a single? Cut the track?
You know how they? Yeah, he did. He let a bunch of guys go by, but it just made me laugh that nobody else had just done it. because you got so pinched off. But he got so pinched off, instead of trying to sneak around top block, he just turned and rolled over the single and let a couple guys by and kept going.
I think so I think there is going to be a little bit of work done for Chase to improve his starts again, which I thought we had that figured out with the taller seat and everything he did pre-season. But it sounds like he's going to look into that a little bit more again. But Chase has been great, as has Eli, has Jett, through the first couple of rounds. So this win doesn't change anything from my perspective. It's just like, yes, one of the best riders won the race. Does it change the way you view Chase at all?
No, I mean, tonight, just the parity, we'll get to it with Webb and Roczen. If anything, like, don't get me wrong, Chase, depending what is going on with Jett's knee, like, Chase is maybe slightly my favorite in this group, but I also love how I also feel in the same breath the championship is fairly wide open, if that makes sense. Like, I mean, there's definitely plenty of players, but yeah, Chase just solid, doesn't change. The only opinion is just it keeps backing up. Like, this is what we talked about earlier so far in the season. This is probably the most complete Chase Sexton we've seen.
Yeah, I would agree. Let's tackle Jett's knee injury or potential knee injury. So, dabbed it coming out of the first turn in the final main event. Immediately gave up on the race. It looked like there wasn't even a second thought about continuing. Yeah. Hobbled to the medics unit. I saw him leaving the track on crutches. So there's that. Spoke to Lars Lindstrom at the end of the night, like 2 hours after the main events, and he said that when they were doing like whatever they were doing in the medic rig, Jett's knee felt tight, so there was less concern about it being an ACL. Obviously, you don't know. There's going to be an MRI done on Monday, and then I would presume that we will find something out late Tuesday, early Wednesday, would be when I'm looking out for that. Yeah. I don't know. It's textbook how to tear an ACL. If he hasn't torn his ACL or his MCL, I would consider him very, very lucky. I think that's fair. But based on the outlook of Lars and the other chatter that's around the Honda HRC Progressive truck, I do feel optimistic that this is going to be okay. Now, do I think that he will be in Tampa 100% and winning? Probably not. But do I think he'll be in Tampa? Yes. Cautiously.
Yeah, I would say cautiously. I agree with that. I spoke to Hayes after the race, and it was pretty, they're like, hey, he's switched his flight. He's going straight back to California. Actually, he's at G's today. So I don't know if they were able to figure out how to sneak him in for an MRI somewhere today, but their thing was more like, hey, we think it's just like hyperextension. He said Jett was, we saw him on crutches, but he said he was kind of wandering around the rig. There was no immediate swelling. Like I said, everything you had to check how tight, just that, maybe major stinger, maybe even I thought about later. I'm like, okay, if you jam it up hard enough, maybe just like a little fraction on like tib fib plateau or something, maybe it jammed it that way or something different that he felt. But yeah, they seemed, optimistic that there was not a lot of doom and gloom feel there. It was like, hey, it needs to get checked out, but they seem pretty confident. So I agree with you. I would not be shocked if he is at Tampa. Not going to say he's going to be 100%, probably be off full week. Might, depending on what they actually find in there, might be a couple mellow rounds for him. But I would say I'm 75% chance north of that I think we see him at Tampa.
But to play devil's advocate, on this day after Anaheim 2, Prado had been hanging out at the race all night, laughing, joking. All signs indicated that Prado was completely fine.
Yep.
So there's that. And then also, of course, a lot of riders have dealt with ACL injuries in the past. I was talking to a rider today, we'll go nameless, and said, I said about the whole it felt tight when they were doing examinations in the medic truck. And this rider said it will feel tight immediately after because the swelling will keep it tight.
Yeah.
And that means nothing. If anything, that probably means it is torn and they just can't figure it out until the MRI on Monday. Because this rider also said the crazy sharp pain that caused him to pull off is trademark ACL, which I can't disagree with any of that either. So who knows? I guess I've just given a very good argument why he hasn't torn his ACL and a very good argument why he has torn his ACL.
The thing that struck me watching him leave the track, though, is, it just seems to be an age-old thing. Like, let's talk about the Carmichael era. Let's talk about the impressive run that Dungey had. Like, it is Jett comes into the class. Look how good he was his first pro motocross season, his first 450 Supercross season. You look at this and you could see why fans and people are just like, this kid's going to go on a run. Like, he's going to be unstoppable. I understand why people think that and say that. But then you also look at the landscape of the sport, post Carmichael Dungey kind of guys. It's like, it's hard to stay on top. It is so hard to stay on top. It is so hard to stay injury free. So yeah, it's, let's say this ends up being something bigger, back-to-back kind of injuries for Jett. It's not shocking. It is very, very hard to stay on top of the sport. Look at, what's happened to like Tomac with his injuries and a couple of these guys in class. Like, again, it can happen. On one hand, we may look at this, go, yeah, Jett, we've talked about it before. It's like, as this older group kind of heads out, it's like, well, here comes the Chase in Jett era of the sport for the next 8 to 10 years, but it can also happen in the blink of an eye where Jett could have 2 or 3 seasons like this with nagging injuries that could really hold up this, masterful plan everybody thought would play out in the record books.
This is purely coincidence, of course, but it is funny how it's worked out. Throughout Jett's 250 career, there was all of this fuss about Jett at the Triple Crowns.
Yeah.
Then last year in Supercross, he's completely error-free for the most part, except for one drama happened at the Triple Crown. And then once again, the one drama happens at a Triple Crown. Complete coincidence. There is nothing to this. But it is weird how after all of this fuss throughout his career that Jett struggles at Triple Crowns, there now does seem to be some sort of black cloud over Jett at Triple Crowns. Weird coincidence, timing, all of that.
You play back the foot dab, and you never know like how off balance he got. It just seems so weird, straight line, all of a sudden, like, oh, dab it. That's it. If that's what ends, let's say worst case scenario, that's what ends the Supercross season, mind blown. Like, we went to a Triple Crown in a straight line. He dabs his leg, and that could be it. Again, I go back to it. It gives me, and not that I already didn't have respect, when I look again at some of the streaks of the best have been on, like Carmichael Dungey, you got to put even more respect into that. It is hard to stay healthy in this sport. It is so hard.
Yeah. Let me ask you this. Well, let me tell you this and then ask you this. I didn't talk to Jett, obviously, but watching him leave the track, he didn't seem to be in an insane amount of pain, didn't seem to be super pissed off. His demeanor seemed to be that of someone who felt as though this was going to be okay. Second of all, I was tussling with this. I interviewed Hunter, and the whole time I'm interviewing Hunter, I'm like, do I ask him about Jett? But I have long been, I don't like the talking to Hunter as if he's Jett's brother. I hate that. I hate every time I hear someone ask Hunter a question about Jett, I hate it. Yeah. So I didn't do it. But maybe I should have.
Sorry, sneeze.
Okay, brilliant.
Ruin it. There we go. No, same. I every once in a while like ask him questions that's parody or just like little stuff about they work together stuff. But yeah, going to him and go, hey, so tell me if your brother's okay. Like, that's a question for a Lars. That's a question for a Dazzy, for the management, Jacob, somebody else. That's not. Hunter has his own results. Let's keep Hunter's story rolling. We'll talk about Jett with the relevant parties.
So as we said, MRI Monday, and yeah, I would expect news Tuesday afternoon, Wednesday morning, maybe sooner. Who knows? I mean, if it's good news, it'll be apparent immediately, and if it's really bad news, I guess it will also be apparent immediately.
And then one saving grace being that it happened in a Triple Crown, and he had 2 good mains for that. I think he still got 8th overall in the night, and he's 13 points back in the championship. So still in this, if he's if everything checks out really okay and he's back up to speed in a round or 2, there's still he's still in this in a sense.
Yeah, it is absolutely insane that all we have done is talk about how great Tomac has been this year, and all we've done is talk about the Lawrences struggling with the new Honda. We've just seen Jett potentially tear his ACL and ride off in a main event. Yet, Jett is 4 points down on Tomac. I mean, yes, the Triple Crown is the reason, but it just is like, almost feels like an alternative dimension.
Well, that comes back to their talking point. I mean, with, as you tweet out, like, hey, if you count the Triple Crowns as individual mains, we went 5 races for 5 winners, bringing in Webb and Roczen into this conversation. It's a great title run so far. It's a great championship.
Jett has a lot of questions at the moment, of course, but the one question he doesn't have is about the power delivered to his Honda CRF 450 WE, because Yoshimura is the pinnacle of power in this industry, and Jett Lawrence has counted on them to take him to the top time and time again. And when he comes back, no matter whether that is Tampa or maybe further down the line, if this is really bad, he will be able to count on Yoshimura once more. And you can do the same by visiting yoshimura-rd.com to see what they have available for you. Thank you to them for their support of the Vital MX post-race show. Let's go to Webb, who has a terrible track record at Glendale. Came out quite feisty, to be expected perhaps, because he was so down in the dumps after Anaheim 2. He did go testing before Glendale, the first time that he had kind of deviated from his suspension setup from early 2024. From what I hear, he hated it and immediately went back to the base. So Webb's still very much digging his heels in setup-wise. And I actually said to him...
Round 624, baby.
Is this a comment on just how good your Yamaha setup is in this instance? Or have you always been like that your entire career? And he said that is just the way he has always been. Which, to be honest, kind of surprised me, because obviously at KTM there was a lot of fuss about Webb wanting to try certain things, blah, 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 blah. But, yeah. Anyway, besides the point. I was very impressed by his sprint speed and intensity in the first main event. That was obviously the highlight of his night. Podium, great. Second podium of the year? Second? First? Second?
Second? No?
I think it's second, no? Yeah, second. He was on the podium in San Diego when he was sick. A lot of people have commented to me that the way that Webb held himself in Glendale, the way that he looked on the podium, the way that he tackled the event, they feel like Cooper Webb is now on. They feel like a switch has been flicked, and come Tampa, everyone's in big trouble because Webb is now on. And you could say, to support that Webb is the type of guy that sees Jett go out or potentially be hindered somewhat. And yes, that just opens Pandora's box a little bit. So I will be perhaps watching Webb more intently than anyone else when we get to Tampa, because... yeah, I'd be interested to see if this carries over or if we revert back to an Anaheim 2 type situation. Of course, let's not forget the last time we were in Tampa, Cooper Webb did win. So a good venue, unlike Glendale, which is terrible for him.
I just, as always, love how much of a gamer Webb is. Again, I was kind of sitting with some friends that, follow sport, and they're like, okay, they're just asking me Triple Crown stats a little bit. And I'm like, look, Tomac's won the most of these. You go through like Kenny and Chase and Jett. I think they all have just had like one Triple Crown win. I'm like, yeah, Cooper has 4, but his Glendale results are also not that strong. This is Eli's house. This leans more in a Chase direction, more in a Jett direction even. So to watch him that first main kind of commandingly put himself out front on the parade lap, hit the big triple that he hadn't hit, just sight unseen a few things. I'm like, okay, he's ready to rip. He wants to prove his point. And even, early into that first main, he's leading. Jett's starting to track him down a little bit. And I was very curious, and he responded so well to Jett's pace. Another one that really stood out to me is his whoop pace all night. The one after the on-off, again, regardless if he went inside, outside. We always think of Webb as maybe whoops being one of his weaker points in the 450 class, more of a jumper. Very fast set. He looked fantastic in those all night. Again, you just cannot count him out. And to your point, if he's able to kind of come into the season a little behind schedule from an injury and be down a little bit on prep, and by round 4 being able to put himself up front in something that he's not historically good at, yeah, I agree with you. I think he's the one to watch at Tampa. I think that'll be a big telltale.
Have you shared all concerns about Cooper Webb now? I'm not sure maybe I have. I actually don't know. I'm not sure that I'm now like Chase Sexton, Eli Tomac, Jett Lawrence, Cooper Webb, here we go. But I think I'm very much like Webb is now back to being in that group and a firm factor. But I'm not so much like, is Webb your title favorite? I'm not there yet.
No, he's not my title favorite, but he's well in the conversation. I was actually struggling with this earlier because I think, we left the opening couple rounds. It's like, okay, Chase is in this, Eli is in this, Jett's in this. That's beyond obvious. And then I was floating with Webb and Kenny conversation, and I'll still hand it same thing. Just like, man, I really thought watching the round and watching Kenny's intensity at times, just like he is also trying to cement himself in this so much. I feel like he is grasping on that red plate theory from this weekend, just trying to really, really prove he should be in this. So between the two of them, I think they're both yes in this title hunt. I guess you have to lean towards Webb a little bit more than Roczen in certainty of staying in it the long haul, correct?
Yes, but that you've just made my point for me. Because the fact that you are still putting Webb and Roczen in the same category tells me that you've not fully bought into Webb yet. Because pre-season, Webb and Roczen were very much not in the same category.
I guess actually I might be giving a lot more credit to Roczen. I would say my counter to that is I'm bringing Roczen much more in the conversation. Yes, Coop, we did again preseason. Coop's a title contender. He's always going to be. There's no reason to doubt him anymore. Anybody does is an idiot. I guess I'm saying yes, I'm in this that Webb's in the title hunt. I'm arguing that Roczen is very close to that conversation for me now.
Okay, well, let's talk about Roczen then. Third overall with a late pass to knock Eli Tomac off the podium. Won the second main event. I was maybe a little alarmed at the lack of progress or intensity, you could say, in the final main event. Equally maybe alarmed, I think it was the first main event. Well, it must have been, yes. Chase turned it up, ran Kenny down, passed him, and then dropped him quite quickly. So that made me raise one eyebrow a little bit, like, because Kenny did look great all day and fiery. We saw it in the second main event. So yeah, I don't know where I sit with Roczen. I think I'm just the same. I don't think Glendale necessarily made me higher. It didn't make me lower. I'm more like, okay. But credit where it's due, not finished outside of the top 4 at all this year. That's quite an achievement in a field such as this. And look at the guys who you expected to dominate, and they've had irregular results. So that in itself is a major accomplishment.
Now, in that conversation, let's play long term. Let's say Kenny keeps that up. Let's say somehow statistically he stays inside the top 4 the entire season. Is that enough to get the job done? Do you expect between, when you look at the field, you look at everybody else behind, let's say a Sexton, a Webb, a Tomac, and a Lawrence, like everybody on that. Those names, are they going to continue to, no matter how bad their night goes, be 6th, 5th better, or will just, if Kenny can keep this up, is that enough to win this title, or does he, in your mind, need to show a little more to enter himself into the championship conversation? Needs a little bit more raw performance night to night than just being there and being solid.
Yeah, I need to see a powerful win. Mm-hmm. Because ultimately I do believe that Chase, Eli, and potentially Jett, depending on his status, I feel like we can see the potential bubbling away there, where if this clicks with starts, particularly, I guess, for both of those guys, they will take control a little bit. So I feel like we're on the precipice of that. Precipice of that. Because, you saw with Chase and Eli, at points in Glendale, it was like, oh, wow. Now, at points in Glendale, it was also like, oh, wow, in a negative way. But the oh, wow, in a positive way makes me go, well, that's coming down the line here. Which is also where I'm at with Jett, based on the qualifying performance, but of course, difficult to really talk about him because he could, who knows? It's all on the table at the moment.
One more for you with Webb and Roczen. Which one of their main events meant more to you? Do they weigh out the same, or was one more commanding and more convincing there because they each, picked up a main event win technically inside the Triple Crown?
They were both very similar because they were both kind of won in the first half and then maintained in the second half coming under extreme heat. But just based on the fact that Webb had a tougher start to the season than Roczen, Webb's meant more to me. And also because simply Roczen winning in Glendale, not a surprise. Webb winning in Glendale, wow, that's a anomaly. So yeah, I think Tampa will be quite telling. I would argue that Webb and Roczen really, either one of them needs a win in Tampa, just to underline the positive steps that have been made in Glendale. We kind of skipped over Tomac. Or did we talk about Tomac?
Results-wise, no. Well, Tomac's next on overall result, 4th on the night.
Yeah, good point.
Interesting to watch him build because, first main, again, House of Eli. This is actually, it's kind of funny because geography wise, this is, I have to go look. I think this is almost closer to him than actually Denver is.
Yeah, I think he said that before.
And he actually did a different program this year. Is he, well, everybody else has been California based. He's actually been staying in Arizona all January. Airbnb house, paid out a Supercross track out there, rebuilt. So that's where he's been hanging out. So definitely like a little second home race to him. Main event one definitely had me scratching my head, but built throughout the night. Back to what he said about just moments. I mean, main two, him and Chase both with starts, but Eli came from a ways back to catch Chase as they were both coming through the field and then kind of stalled out. And then, of course, final race, just classic Eli performance.
Are we worried about the starts?
A little bit, yeah.
They seem to be getting worse somehow every single race.
Yeah, I thought, beginning of season was like, here we go. And now we're kind of trending the other direction, which is not great because you just look at the names he's battling with. You look at how, again, Kenny and Coop's wins are kind of start-based a little bit. Not that, again, we just talked about how amazing both of them rode. But I look at this result, and it's like, okay, break this down into 3 individual mains. Yeah, the first is great, but the 6th and the 4th are so-so. You don't want to keep seeing these throughout the season, and if the starts stay where they are, you're going to see more results like that.
I put this to Eli on press day. Great interview, by the way, in the scale of Eli interviews.
I think you walked back to me and said, best Eli interview you've ever had.
No, there was one in East Rutherford that was very good. But on a scale of Eli interviews, it was in the top side. But I put this to him, and if I'd seen him after the race, I was going to ask him the exact same question. But essentially, I said to him, 1 podium across the first 3 rounds at that point. But speed and everything was amazing. So are you stoked on the riding and really a bit degaff about the lack of podiums? Or are you frustrated that the riding hasn't led to more success? And at that point, he said, I'm just stoked at the feeling, the riding, etc., etc. However, now, I'm even more mind-blown at the way that Tomac is riding. He has 1 podium in 4 rounds. How is that possible when you're riding like this? Arguably the best Tomac that we've ever seen in Supercross. I think you can say that. And I even said to him on press day, I said, are you better than 2023? Which in my mind was the best Eli we saw in Supercross. And he said yes, categorically. So, has Eli Tomac's 2025 been a clear success because of the riding and all of the factors around that? Or can you not say that because he's had 1 podium in 4 rounds, which whatever way you spin it, that would be perceived as a disappointment?
I think it still has to be a success because I think there was question marks. Because the speed alone still gives you, again, we're talking about we're considering this guy's in the title hunt. He's going to be here, we think, the entire year in terms of that title run. Based on what we saw last year, you definitely did not feel the same. So at least the feeling's there, the ability is there. So yeah, I think you have to label this start of the season as success. Is as successful as he would like in terms of results? Of course not, but yeah, it's trending good. It is still just weird watching that Triple Crown, particularly the 3rd main, because again, I'm watching Eli do Eli, and it's like, oh, he's running so good, and watching him put the track here, and then I look up at the Triple Crown, the results, and it's like, Jesus, it's him and Kenny for 3rd, and he's going to get bumped off the podium tonight, and that really puzzled me, because again, I'd think about, oh yeah, he only had a 6-4, but when you looked at the riding across the night, it was baffling to be like, he's not going to be on the podium tonight, really?
Yeah, it is weird. And I think I side with you because it is possible that he could have had 4 podiums but be pissed because actually the riding wasn't that great and just circumstantially you luck into it a little bit. So you'll always choose, I guess it's condition over position. To steal the start line mantra and apply it to riding, you would always choose condition over position. Because if you're riding as well as Eli is, you're like, well, this has to come around. Whereas if he had 4 podiums and was riding terribly, you'd be more thinking, my luck is going to run out at some point.
Yeah. Well, the old say, we can work with speed. You got to imagine if he's riding this well, all it takes is them tweaking a couple things. Because me and you talk about this all the time, I really truly believe, of course, that starts is very mental, very believing in yourself. If they can tweak something just a little bit, or he just gets a couple decent starts in a row and starts to believe in that factor, that gets fixed a lot quicker than trying to find legit speed in the middle of the season. Like you said, if he was podiuming these first 3 rounds, but just flat out wasn't in the conversation in terms of race pace, I feel like that's a lot harder to find magically at a round where the starts come and go sometimes for guys during the season. He could be 3 more rounds of missed starts, and then he could magically we're gonna have a good race, and he could go 6 rounds in a row with like top 5 starts.
I did say to him on press day, shorter start straight in Glendale, I feel like that is a disadvantage for you just because you thrive on a longer start straight where you can use the power, move around a little bit. And he agreed, but felt as though the Glendale start straight was not so short that it would necessarily disadvantage him. Again, didn't talk to him after the race, so maybe it played out differently to how he saw it pre-race. But yeah, Tomac needs a whole shot here just to kind of quell the doubts a little bit because starts, and in a field as deep as this, even if Jett's out, the field is so deep still that starting 10th, which is, to be honest, higher end of his starts, first lap positions this year, it's not going to crack it. So yeah, that'll be what I'm watching for in Tampa, I think, because, and again, to be honest, if we go to Tampa and then Eli has 1 podium in 5 rounds, my mind will be blown even more.
I feel like, and because we're shifting to East so early in the year, I am very also curious. Like, we all know Eli can ride any condition, but we've seen this resurgence of him early in the season. West Coast slides are all good. Like, I'm still also very curious with him with Tampa. Like, does it shift anything in his performance? Anything in his pure pace? I'm not saying it's gonna be drastic, but do we see anything change come in Tampa? And I feel like we're just keep adding it to every rider. How are they gonna do it Tampa? How are we gonna do it Tampa?
Well,
not as much as a Webb or Roczen, but I do have a little bit, like, not question mark, just curiosity to see how this version of Eli is once we get a little more east and rutted and deep.
Maybe I'm misremembering, but I feel like Tampa is actually more of a West Coast track, isn't it? It's quite a hard base. It's not soft.
I believe you are right.
Yeah,
yes.
Well, obviously we have a sand rhythm
one.
section, so that is great. But it is, from my memory at least, Tampa is like quite hard pack and rocky, and so it's going to be really hot. So I don't know, it will be even more baked.
Oh god, if it's hot, it's going to be so dusty. Like the first year we went. What's going to be our first real soft track thing?
Detroit.
We go to Detroit. Yep, we go to Detroit after Tampa.
Yeah, that'll be soft.
Arlington.
Hunter Lawrence, the last 3 races, 5-5-5. Is he pissed off at the number of 5th place finishes, or is he stoked? I couldn't really get to the bottom of that after the race. I feel like if you're Hunter in a field as stacked as this, to be in the top 5 consistently is great. But there will come a point, and I think we're there now, where even a 4th, throw a dog a bone, a 4th would just be some sort of boost. Because I think 5th has gotten old quite quickly.
Yeah. Well, compared to, it's not easy to beat the start of last year with him with a DNQ for the main at one point. Yeah, I think if you go to ask a Hunter honestly early preseason, like, hey, against these level of guys, would you be happy with 5.55s kind of across the board? We saw day 1 him running better than that. Yeah, I think he'd come back and be like, that's a good start. But yeah, 1 or 2 more of these I would think would start to get like build. But nice and solid so far. Funny one is, other than A1, and I don't mean this in a bad way, he falls a little bit in the quiet category of his racing. Like, even thinking about him dicing with people, like, I'm not recalling a lot of the last couple of races. Do you have anything to go off of, like, actual moments watching him? Like, the results have been solid, but there's not a lot of standout in my brain where, like, Speed Anderson, I have, more memories of Anderson so far this year in racing.
Well, Anderson's had 2 podiums and led laps, so... Exactly. For Hunter, the biggest standout for me is the end of the San Diego main event where he was edging closer to the podium.
Yep.
And I still believe that is the best 5th place that he has had this year. But I agree, he's been in no man's land a little bit. After what we've seen so far, does Hunter win a main event this year?
I mean, I'm sticking to the 5. Oh, wait, no, it would be 5. I'm sticking to the 5 of Sexton, Webb, Roczen, Tomac, Lawrence, Jett Lawrence, that is. I hate to say I'm not trying to back up. It's a hard sell for me right now.
Yeah.
hard sell. I do think with his consistency, I think once we unlock a podium, I could see him nudging. He's not somebody I think that's going to have a lot of little highs and lows. Like I think he gets there consistently. So once we crack a podium, I wouldn't be surprised if we see a bit of a spree of them. But man, I'm having a hard time being sold on a win right now.
Yeah, and as I said pre-season, I do not believe that the success of Hunter's season is measured by a victory. That would be quite a step forward. I think that if he can if he can continue to be a top 5 guy consistently and sprinkle in some podiums, that's great. I think that almost to judge him solely on his ability to win at this point indoors is a discredit to him and expecting too much. Justin Hill was great in Glendale, but until now, I didn't realize he was that good. Of course, 8-10-7 to end up in 6th overall is a
7th overall, right? Anderson 6th?
Not on my results.
Oh.
Unless, wait, if we've got different results, then I'm very confused.
I'm staring at one of our site. Now I'm scared.
What website are you on?
Ours?
Well, I'm...
Oh, it shows him with the tiebreaker. Huh.
No one trusts that website. I'm on the Supercross Live website.
Yep.
But yeah, so either way you spin it, okay, him and Addison tied. So either way you spin it, 8-10-7 for 6th overall is quite lucky and fortunate. But Justin Hill was certainly back, and I think this is just what we're going to see from Justin Hill. Spin the wheel. 1 week, amazing. Couple of weeks of quietness and maybe irrelevance. And then we're back again with an amazing ride where he's pushing Roczen, pushing Tomac, and all of that good stuff. But it's just weird that this kind of went away for 2 weeks, and I'm not sure there's any explanation why. I would quite like to talk to Justin Hill and kind of get to the bottom of this, though. But I'm not sure that... I mean, he has said that he's taking it more seriously, so maybe he does have a legitimate answer.
I'm curious, because after the drop-off, after I went to round 1, seeing 2 and 3, I was like, okay, a little more same old. But then he was actually number 1 in time qualifying for all of about 20 seconds and deep into a time qualifying session, might I add.
I thought it was early. Was it not early? I thought it was early.
I say deep. I think it was halfway through at least. Like a bunch of guys had already put in like decent heaters. He went to number 1 on the board, but then I watched him put together a lap, and of course I'm like, yep, track with really big jumps you have to hit consistently with really perfect timing. Of course Justin's going to do really well here. And that's not this. That's like, this is very much in his wheelhouse and his skill set. So once I started seeing him put the track together and, of course, more and more big rhythms unlocked and realizing how precise he had to be, I was like, yeah, he'll have plenty fine night here.
I have absolutely nothing to say about Jason Anderson because I noticed him once all night, and that was early in the second main event. So the fact that I didn't notice him means that he must have had terrible starts, and I genuinely forgot that Jason Anderson existed, to be honest. Which... we're now in a very weird sequence with him. Good, bad, good, bad. I don't know. I just kind of lean on what I said last week, where I feel like Anaheim 1 and 2 were such great opportunities to win, but failing to capitalize on that, you've kind of missed your boat a little bit. And Glendale has only supported that line of thinking, in my opinion. We talked about Jett Lawrence. Aaron Plessinger was 9th, finally in the top 20 again. And although it's nothing to write home about, there were little flashes where he did look great. And although they've been few and far between, there have been moments this season, in timed qualifying, in heat races, even in the occasional main event, despite his poor results, where he has seemed capable, flashy. So this is positive. This is some momentum. If he can build on what I've been seeing, I could see him with Hunter, or above Hunter even, which, truth be told, is where AP needs to be to keep his ride, because this has been difficult so far.
Yeah, again, I had somebody ask me this weekend just referencing him, and they were just like, do you think he could get back to where he was last year? And I asked them, what do you mean? They're like, oh, could he win again? I'm like, man, it is, I feel like it is tough for a rider to dig out of this deep of a hole. Like, yeah, he can, like you said, to Hunter, get a podium, but you feel like even though he's a race winner last year, when you started in this deep of a hole, like, it's hard to make that much progress. Wouldn't you agree? It's kind of already, there's like a little bit of a tone set, and yes, you can keep improving on it, but I just don't see it, and nothing there. And I think it's just terribly hard in this sport. Not to say he could be right back to it next year, like to where he was last year. But it seems like right now it's hard to just see like, oh yeah, magically 1 week he's just all of a sudden going to go to second place. Like it's going to be a ladder to climb to kind of nudge back in there.
He just needed some momentum. So thankfully he has that now. The question is, what will he do with it?
Yep.
You said about Justin Hill that tracks with long rhythm sections and big jumps right up his alley. I would have said the same about Malcolm Stewart. So colour me surprised that he had great starts and didn't quite have it. I mean, he said as much to me that he was off and he just didn't click and it was one of those days. But I would have, with those starts, I would have felt like this would have been, his night.
That was weird because, like I said, good starts, and even the opening laps, he looked spicy. I mean, scrubbing stuff hard, had a lot of intensity to his riding, and then just, even though, pretty rough with it being shorter mains a bit, and just, I would almost lose track of them. I would see the early part of the main, like, okay, Malcolm's up here, this is positive, and then a couple laps go by, I'd be watching a few guys, and I'd look back and be like, we lost him. So.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, the starts are better, that's good, but I'm just expecting him to do more with these starts. And maybe it's because the starts were missing for so long that the anticipation for Malcolm finally having an opportunity built so high. But yeah, so far he's had a couple of shots at it and not really done what I believe Malcolm is expected to do by most, including himself. Fernandez had... What happened to him? He had the same problem 3 times, didn't he? But I'm spacing on what it was.
If it's the same practice if it was this problem for earlier today, Ben and Axel.
Yes,
and he kept hanging
many
up
times.
Kept hanging up the hub. He was one of the few people I know that was struggling with that problem, but his was particularly bad. I think they thought it was happening mostly from the wall jump, but same thing. He definitely had one of his better overall nights in terms of starts and pace early on, but just each time kind of struggled with that issue.
Well, and I believe after the race he was very adamant and almost trying to draft the media over to explain that he doesn't suck and there was a reason for his results not being better. Because truth be told, similar to Anaheim 2, he actually looked really, really good and really, really competitive.
Well, again, crazy one being around the pits all the time is Dylan of the past. People know that he's very vocal about the bike. As far as where he's fairly happy with everything. He is, just trying to find his pace again a little bit. So I know it's got to be frustrating from that situation because I think he feels a lot better than he did this time. Of course, last year, he's a lot more comfortable. His pace actually looks good when you see him just running by himself, but just better than Aaron's situation. Don't get me wrong, but same thing, there was a little bit better swinging, but just needs a little momentum to swing back his way and a little luck right now to build on.
Yeah. I think it's coming now. I'm actually quite excited by the potential that I've seen from Fernandez. A couple of notes to N450s. Barsha didn't ride all week because he cut his shin on the foot peg and needed stitches. I don't know if you can correlate his results to that because...
How do you cut your foot? Oh my God, just like pushing a bike around?
No, I don't know. I think he slipped off. I don't know. He told me it's on our press day interviews. I can't remember.
Wonder if it went through the gator area or the front of it through the leather. Huh.
No one knows, but he did need stitches and was off the bike for that reason. Justin Cooper turned his season around at Anaheim 2, and now we've kind of turned it back around in a negative way because of Glendale, so I'm not quite sold on Jay Cooper at this point. He needs another start similar to Anaheim 2 because I just don't think he has it in him to charge forward in this field. And I think he would even admit that. I think that's chronically his issue.
How much do you worry about Jay Coop in terms of, this time last year, me and you were both screaming, hey, if you're a team, invest in this guy. Somebody needs to lock this person down long term. It's early, but musical chairs, what's going on 450 class? Do you look at this as, there's other rides popping up, but is this still... Do people have a good enough memory what he did last year? Or is this going to heavily affect him if this continues on this trend in terms of negotiation? Because I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, he's probably on another 1-year deal.
Yeah, he is. I think I would frame it like this. Previously, I would have said that Jay Coop was undoubtedly more attractive than AP, Barsha, Malcolm. If he continues like this, he's going to slot into that group, which is a much more dicey group to be a part of because realistically, there's a high chance one of those riders will be left without a seat, or at least a seat that they would desire. So, yeah. That is how I would spin that. Let me end 450s with this. January is done. The first month of Supercross is done. Who's exceeded your expectations the most across the first 4 rounds? Who has impressed you the most? Who stands out? Is there no one? Or is there someone in a bad way? We can also be negative.
Positive, most impressive. It's a little bit of a tie between Roczen and Tomac. Again, the Tomac one's weird because the results on paper aren't there, but the riding is so good that it just leaves you feeling positive for him for the rest of the season. Kenny, on one hand, shouldn't be a shock because he is good early in the season. But again, when we come off that conversation of all these guys were talking about how much they were feeling like they were having to reinvent themselves or push to move as Jett and Chase kind of move this pace forward in the field, to see Kenny, without the resources, some of these guys, the health situations he dealt with everything over the year, to see him continue to move forward with them, I find very impressive as well. So a little bit tie Kenny and Eli on the impressive side. On the negative side of it, most disappointing, even though Aaron's results have been terrible, again, his has just been weird situations, so it's not him. It would have to probably be Justin Cooper.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Let me ask you this quickly to end 450s. Would you tell me that Eli Tomac has been out and out better than Chase Sexton so far this year in riding? Would you say that Eli Tomac is, in your opinion, without a doubt, faster? And if they start together, yes, Eli Tomac wins 9 times out of 10. Because I kind of picked that up from what you've been saying.
No, I won't go that far.
But you won't go that far, but you are in to that line somewhere.
I mean, it's what we say about Chase. The hard part is, like, Chase is a more complete rider right now. I do think that Eli has shown on certain nights, like, of the two of them, if you ask me which one has more raw pace in the right moment right now, like, again, it can be Eli's is hit or miss, though. But there's a part of me that wants to say Eli has more raw outright pace in this moment. But yes, Chase is a more complete racer right now than Eli is. That's everything. Fitness starts. Not that Chase's starts are amazing, but still better than Eli's. I think consistency of raw speed, like I said, it's hard because I would say, okay, 9 out of 10 nights, no, Eli is not going to be faster than Chase, but on 2 or 3 nights, I think the level in which Eli can go raw is like it's back to Eli level. It's very impressive. But
Okay.
Chase is better across the board.
Not to turn this into a massive debate.
Here we go. I saw the disgruntledness in your face.
Okay, so the first main event, for instance, or the first race, we're calling it races, I think. Chase started very, very slow. And then, oh my God, when he turned it on, I was like, Like, it was, I need to dive into the lap times, but it was like, oh my, this is incredible. Yeah. And I think the second main event, or was it the third main event? The same sort of situation happened. Second main event, because Chase and Eli were both going incredibly fast and closing on Jett and Kenny second a lap. But this is where I'm thinking, Eli was going incredibly quick, but Chase was matching him toe for toe and pulling away, and then Eli would pull him back in, and then Chase would pull away again.
See, second, where my interpretation of that second race was, they were both impressive field, but Eli had he had to get 2 people to get to Chase. So, like, Chase was impressively catching Kenny and I. Go look at wasn't there like 4 or 5 people between them? Like,
I think Eli, if you go to the first corner, there was only 1 or 2 people between them.
Oh yeah, first corner. No, Eli blew the first 3 sections. Like, Chase, when we get to the end of the lap and they actually start putting pace together, he had to get through people and get a gap back down to get to Chase.
I just feel like we're falling into the trap again. And I don't want to have to start beating the drum again. But I feel like we are slowly falling into the trap again where everyone's kind of discrediting Chase. Or he's not the shiny toy.
This is the best Chase
No, but not the shiny toy. He's not the shiny toy. Jett and Eli are the shiny toys.
They are. I mean, listen to the fan reaction.
They're the Buzz Lightyears.
They're the shiny toy. You hear it in the fan reaction. When when Eli was going through, passing people through the pack, that crowd was electric.
Well,
Chase did not get the same reaction in any of his passes. Eli, the entire stadium in the section I was in was on their feet. Yes, to put it bluntly, you're right. Yes, Eli is the shiny toy.
Yeah, but I'm talking about you. I'm not talking about the fans. Fans can do what they want. I'm Talking about you.
Yeah, I said, like we talked about here, yes, because of the situation from last year, I think Eli is very impressive. And what Chase is doing is more expected of him because you come into preseason just straight up on paper, who are the two most likely to run for this title? Jett and Chase. Preseason, eliminate all.
I think preseason, not everyone, 90% of people had Eli above Chase.
Really? I did not run
but
any.
Maybe not justified, but purely just because, no, 100% that's the case. How many, you went anywhere on the internet, it was Jett versus Eli, Jett versus Eli, Jett, and 100%, you went anywhere on Instagram, that was the narrative. 100%.
See, I can see it because, again, you're talking about also just from what fans want to see. What do people want to see in this final season?
Yes.
They want to see Eli go toe-to-toe with Jett. And that's different. That wasn't Eli early in his career. We've talked about this. It's how long Eli's been here. It's the staying power. It's what people think of him and respect him now. And eventually, Chase will be to that margin. He's kind of a weird... Chase is a very weird in-between. His first year, 450s or two, he was the shiny toy in terms like Jett of style and speed and a couple other things. Jett has surmounted that in people's eyes in terms of the shiny toy factor. Eli has the veteran, the American, the staying power that creates his buzz. Chase will get there one day.
Well, if we continue these interviews, we'll be there very quickly. Give us a couple of weeks. No, we need to go. But final point is, what I'm getting at is specifically the raw speed that Chase showed in San Diego and the end of the first main event in Glendale. I feel like that's not getting as much credit as the raw speed that, say, Tomac has shown at also certain points, when I think those are very comparable. I'm not saying Chase is better than Eli. I'm saying that they are more comparable than people, a la your point, are giving them credit for. So I'm an equal opportunist.
I agree with that.
Equal opportunist. That's all I am. 250s. So after Levi pulled out and we were just heartbroken at how weak West was, I never in a million years would have presumed we would have 4 winners in 4 races. Jordon, perhaps a weird place to start. Is it fair to say that on this night, Deegan was the 4th best rider? Because I think that Jordon, Davies, and Juju were better than Deegan.
I would say Davies, of course, was the best on the night in terms of performance, just hosed the way that third main started out. That's really tough. Even though Jordon got the win, my pecking order is Cole, number 1. I actually put Juju and Hayden equal because, yes, Juju was impressive, but also beyond, he was on the ragged edge so
but I think
often.
I'm talking speed rather than
No, I'm talking about speed.
Okay.
I am talking about speed. I think Cole's number 1. I think Juju and Hayden are fairly close in that response. Yes, Juju had some impressive moments, but Juju also seemed to be riding so on the edge to make it happen. Jordon's was just so well contained. I'd say raw speed-wise, I kind of put Jordon in the 4th place pecking order, but Jordon was by far the most contained doing it. What he was doing, he put it together his night so perfect.
Okay, I'm very surprised that you have Jordon as low as 4th, because I think on mine...
You say you have Hayden 4th. Or do you have Jordon...
I have Jordon in the top 2. I just don't know where. Maybe even first. Yeah, because he moved forward. He dropped Deegan in the... One of them. First one?
First main, yes.
Yeah, him and Davies rode away from Deegan. This is where I was coming from with his thinking, because I thought I saw enough where Davies and Smith were undoubtedly faster than Deegan. And then I also think that Juju showed more in his slicing and dicing through the pack. So that's where I was coming from. But anyway, besides the point, for now, circling back, Jordon Smith wins his first main event of the year and the first Supercross win for Triumph. And I don't know how you package this. They haven't won a GP, but they won the little preseason race and little stuff like that. So although not technically their first motocross win, their first motocross win of note, I guess you'd call it. I don't know.
Official record or of premier stature.
The guy who was writing the PR said to me that he was trying to write it and he didn't know how to do it because he wanted to say their first off-road win, but technically, if you want to be really picky, their first off-road win was in the Spanish Championship last year. So the guy who was writing the PR was messaging me and saying, I don't know what to do with this. And I was like, yeah, neither do I. So I think the guy settled on just first Supercross win and just backed away from the off-road thing. But I personally count it as their first significant off-road win, which is cool. And also, two things worth noting. One, this was just their 13th Supercross. Incredible. And also, I didn't realize this until I read the Triumph PR, but they debuted in Supercross on Feb 2nd last year, and this win came on Feb 1st. So technically, by the slimmest of margins, they won before the end of their first year, which is quite like. Although it's
them racing East only last year was perfect.
Like although it's semantics and what does it really mean, I think it's much more powerful when you say Triumph won before the end of their first year. I think that sounds much more like, oh wow.
Big thing I'd say is like I think this is a impressive turnaround is too harsh of a term, but you probably get what I mean here for the U.S. program particularly. Because let me ask you this: I think we had this conversation on a podcast last year of like who would more likely get a win first, the U.S. program or the GP program, and I'm pretty sure we agreed the GP program would get a win first.
Yeah, but that was more because of riders, wasn't it?
Well, that's what. Yeah, I'm saying because of riders, because of depth of talent. Depth of talent and level of bikes in MX2, I thought they would have won a GP first. So to see them win in the US first, super impressive. But just to see, I said to somebody on the team, I was like, man, this was even before Jordon won that night. I was like, compared to last year, it feels like you guys have really arrived in a sense. And the person kind of chuckled at me. He was like, oh, we wish. Like, there's still, the comment to me is like, we're basically operating off a GP spec engine with a couple parts. We have stuff in the works. And Jordon I brought it up to Jordon, like, hey, this is exciting, but there's still so much to look forward to from everybody I talked to there. And he commented that, yeah, it sounds like, straight up, we were talking about the engines, like that Austin's going to be on what they basically have developed as a true US package, potentially at Tampa. So like Jordon, of course, is excited to bring them their first win. He's excited with his riding, but they also, in terms of performance, like they have things still to look forward to in this season. So there's potential growth to even be better than they were, last night.
Yeah, no, incredibly impressive. And as I said last year, I look at Triumph and I just liken it to when Aprilia had a stab at motocross and were just irrelevant. Like I think it's very easy based on the success of Triumph to forget the massive undertaking that has been done because they came in and they slotted into the puzzle so seamlessly that you almost look at it and go, oh, well, yeah, whatever, they're here. Great job. But when you actually compare it more to what Aprilia tried to do, you're like, okay, wow, this is really quite something. I do think that although we're singing their praises here, I do believe that it's not quite receiving the accolades and the celebration that it deserves.
Yeah. No, I agree. Again, I think people in the sport default, and I think my personal opinion is it's not, I'm trying to think how to say this. I'm not saying that still because there's people that have it in their mind that a Triumph is just a different colored KTM. It's more the fact that KTM bought Gas and Husky and basically just threw different plastics on. So we've had these first time OEM winners, twice in the last decade. And part of me feels like that maybe rubs off a little bit to
maybe.
The most general fan. Do they see Triumph? Oh yeah, another bike joined the championship and they won. Like we've seen that happen lately, right? Maybe in a sense I feel bad for them. I feel like maybe the Gas and Husky situation almost devalue what Triumph has done here a little bit in maybe the eyes of the most like our average or rounded fan that doesn't dive into the semantics of it.
That may be the most sensible thing I've ever heard you say.
Wow.
Yeah, I know.
Only took us how many years doing this podcast?
I'm shook, to be honest. But yeah, no, I agree. Where do you look at Jordon title-wise? He's now back in second, 2 points down. If he hadn't had crashed at Anaheim 2 and lost that position, he would be tied with Juju for the red plate now. But instead, 2 points down. I believe that through the first couple of rounds, we didn't discredit his title chances, but certainly looked at him as an outside pick. Are you now more involved in Jordon making a run at this thing?
I thought about this on the drive home this morning, and a really I give him toe to toe with anybody in this, like, tile wise. I'm not saying favorite, but it's, I don't know, just watching like Juju just struggle to put together races. Like even though Hayden won last week and we kind of talked about it, like there was a little bit of pushing in the riding. I didn't think it was like a dominant win. Jordon just seems so complete at the moment. And I could see, even though on one hand, it's like this field is decimated in terms of talent, and on a bad night, Cole, Juju, Hayden, all of them keep coming through. I also just, that kind of rings true to, man, I just don't see Jordon having a bad night. The rest of us, I could see a showdown going bad for one of the kids in this group. It would be so cool to me because, like, I think of Jordon. We even had this conversation with them on interviews I did last year. It's like Jordon and RJ have had such a similar career path to get to this point. The struggles, the people questioning them, the overriding, both of them making decisions where, like, look, I'm just not the kind of guy that's ever going to back down and throwing it away. To see RJ finally pull it off last year, I think this could be Jordon's year. I really am starting to lean on it more. Not title favorite, but I would tie him with whoever else I want to pick in this group for the title.
Yeah, I believe that I'm leaning that direction as well, purely because East-West Showdown, I do believe that Juju will be less effective because it'll be softer, ruttier, etc., etc. Although he did say that he has a plan to kind of improve in those conditions. And East-West Showdown, I kind of believe that Deegan's ego could get the better of him, and he'll be so adamant that he has to go out and make a statement that it could have the opposite effect, whereas consistency should be Jordan's greatest strength, which is quite wild to say about Jordon, because that goes against the narrative of his entire career.
Exactly, and even compared to RJ, even during RJ's title run last year, he still had one or two moments where, RJ still RJ'd a bit, and he would be like, yeah, I'm just never going to be the guy that's going to, if there's an opening, I'm going to take it. If there's a gap, I'm going to go for it. Jordon did say to me, like, even from last week before? Yeah, last week. And he's like, I learned still my lesson a little bit. Like, he basically said, I'm still that kind of guy, but he said the way he even treated the Triple Crowns, the first two mains, he's just said he's very settled and very willing to take what comes to him and not quite overdo it. He seems a little bit more settled in that sense than like RJ was last year, which again, I was thinking about that. So I'm like, man, this RJ pulled off last year. This could be Jordan's finally.
Yeah.
And it really, that shootout, what you just said, the showdown thing really stuck out to me while I was driving home this morning for all the reasons you just listed. And again, it's just Cole's young, never know. Juju, I just don't know where he's been so West Coast based. And then, and I could be wrong. It's just maybe the way he speaks on the podium. Hayden just seems so race by race, which you hear guys say like, oh, you got to take it race by race. But I'm worried sometimes he's so focused on being the best guy that night. Like, does Jordon have the force, the long side to make this happen in a title run?
We talked about Hayden a little bit, but I did really feel as though his entire night was underwhelming. I felt like he never quite had it, whatever it is. And although he's quite tight with Cole Davies, it must have been frustrating for him, for Cole Davies to essentially ride away from him on multiple occasions. And should that be happening to Hayden Deegan in his third year of Supercross when he's meant to be dominating this thing? I don't know. Again, coming into the season, there were people who said Hayden would have a perfect season. I was not on that because I do believe he is a better outdoor rider than indoor, and we haven't seen that in Supercross. But certainly, with the state of this field, I expected him to be the dominant force, and we're kind of underlining the fact that he isn't that.
No, I agree on the most part. Like, still overall better than like round 1 or 2, but a tick on the underwhelming side. The dynamic between him and Cole, to me, though, is super interesting at the moment, just because also the demeanors, like, Cole just does nothing, seems to faze him. He just giggles, like he's just kind of in doing his own thing, his own world a little bit. So I think it'll be very fun to watch through the remainder of this coast if Cole stays in it like this. And yeah, it's got to be weird because coming into this coast, like, again, I agree with you. I'm not on the perfect season train, but this group, especially as we dropped a couple guys, like, I admit it, I was at a 99% sure ratio that Hayden would win this title in a fairly convincing fashion. Is he still the title favorite in most people's eyes? I would think so. Like I said, I'm kind of at a more like a tie between him and Jordon right now, but it's definitely not what I expected. I'm sure for him, it's not like the whole talk of being the most prepared. He's been, way more prepared than last year, and it's just not quite panning out. Now, let me ask you this. With that, you look at this group, Jordon, Hayden, Cole, Julian. There's always this argument, East versus West every year. How curious are you for the showdowns to see this example? Are Jordon, Cole, and Juju just riding that amazing because we think, there's a certain expectation of Hayden? Is it maybe Hayden is actually struggling a little more than we realize? Like, how's that going to play out when we get to a showdown? Are we going to see the East guys? Is there going to be, what's the word I'm looking for? How comparable is this group going to be? I can't think of the word right now, but you know what I mean? Like, do you think one will outweigh the other? Do you have any feeling on that?
I think that the top 4 in each coast will be very comparable, but I think that 5 to 10 in East will absolutely wipe the floor with 5 to 10 in West. Mm-hmm. Wipe the floor, decimate. It won't even be comparable. We've had 4 winners in this supposedly weak coast. Will we get a 5th? And truth be told, I think this really just zeroes in on, will Cole Davies get a win?
Yeah. I mean, the fact that he was so convincingly, it's one thing to look at somebody in a Triple Crown and go, oh, they threw away one. Like Cole's situation in the final main was, he didn't get a good start. That's on him. But what happened with the tough block shooting out in the position and wiping him out is just so completely out of his control outside to get a better start, dude. Convinced 100% Cole's going to win a race. And I mean, maybe we go to Arlington, maybe we get 5 for 5. It would not shock me at this point whatsoever. I would actually bet money on it at this point.
I think as well, it's worth looking at the fact that Cole Davies' progression is obviously a lot to do with Yamaha, Monster Energy, Yamaha Star Racing, all of that. But when you trace him back to being a Yamaha New Zealand kid, it kind of says a lot about Yamaha's global program, the Blue Crew thing. I think maybe that could be more put under a microscope, as well as the influence that Josh Coppins and Ben Townley have had. It really says a lot just about Yamaha's global circle, link, whatever you want to call it, global tie. And I think Blue Crew has gone a long way to kind of pushing that as well. So I think this is a great advertisement for them.
Yeah, they actually had a new Blue Crew branding on the bikes this weekend, new logo.
Yeah, that was weird.
But I think that's hard when some people see Cole and they think of him on the gas last year, and it's like, no, longtime Yamaha kid. It is just, his progression rate is interesting because, of course, like you look at Star and there's that question mark of life after Deegan. When Deegan goes 450, how are the rest of these prospects panning out? I think there's still a big question mark on like a Daxton Bennick, for instance. Dudney's night was really rough, which we'll get to that, I guess, at the end. Futures kids and Star is weird. They have rough nights. Cole is so convincingly, at least early on here, being like, okay, this is going to pan out well for them in the next year or so.
Yeah, no, without doubt. Juju made mistakes, but was still fast. I don't know if I put the mistakes down to being too desperate, rushing the situation, or just racing incidents. I don't know. I mean, if it was truly him losing his head, he wouldn't have worked through the field so effectively. There would have been further mistakes. But again, in my opinion, he was clearly better than Deeks. So coulda, woulda, shoulda. He could have put points on Deegan on this night, which would have been very valuable moving forward. So a missed opportunity, but it could have been a million times worse.
Lucky there was a Triple Crown. I'm sure the first main's different because you toss it once, you come through. I will say you said compound. The second main, I definitely watched him compound a lot of mistakes in the second one after watching it again on the first lap.
You know what I mean? I mean, like cartwheeling multiple times.
Yeah. No, 100%. Definitely a weird one. I'm just trying to figure out how to label it. Just like, do you just chalk them up to simple mistakes or chalk them up to being, a little too... Is there any part of you that you look at those opening laps, you look at what happened to him last weekend, do you think at any point in his mind maybe he just overthought, like, I have to go early and get away from Hayden because he might pump me in a corner. Like, I have to be aggressive early. I need to get away from these guys. I just don't need to put myself in an unnecessary situation.
Yeah, maybe to an extent. But then isn't that always the thinking when you get a whole shot?
Well, you look at last, like, again, leaving the door open, like maybe just after last week, just a little more mindful of I just need to maximize everything and maybe just overdid it just a tick.
Yeah, I mean, bigger picture though, you've got to look at it. 2-1-2-4 is a superb start to his season and much better than 99.9% of people would have predicted. So
99% better than some 250 championship runs. I'm thinking of what was the East Coast year that Malcolm won? It was like when one guy would win one weekend and be 10th the next weekend.
Ben Townley, speaking of Ben Townley, he won the East Coast DNFing the first round. So, yeah. I don't even really know if that's relevant. Michael Moseman continues to improve. I feel like we are now edging towards the realm where we can start to demand results from Michael Moseman. He made a run at Deegs in one of the main events. This is starting to turn into quite an impressive turnaround, quite an impressive story. And as I said, at the start of the season, I was like, just do laps and who cares? Now I'm like, okay, time to start building on this promise, which could ultimately lead to more mistakes or it could lead to great success. Time will tell.
Because of him, do we get 6 winners? Is it possible?
When I was saying that to you, it did cross my mind vaguely, but I think that's a very, very far long shot. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's certainly worth mentioning, but beyond that, I don't think anyone's placing any money on that. Garrett Marchbanks was back. He gave me a rundown of his shoulder injury on Friday. I can't remember exactly, but it certainly sounds like he shouldn't be racing. There's I think there's 4 issues in the shoulder, all of which sound rather serious. But to be honest, he was quite good all day, quite consistent, and much better than I would have expected given his situation. And he was also the top Fox Racing rider with a rich heritage and deep racing DNA. Fox Racing has been at the forefront of motocross for 50 years. They empower the world's best athletes like Jorge Prado, Ken Roczen, Levi Kitchen, and Joe Shimoda to chase their dreams. With their gear, dreamers become champions. They honor the past while inventing tomorrow, pushing the limits of racewear and protection. Because at Fox, change is the only constant. Thank you to Fox Racing, Decal Works, Yamaha Motor USA, and Yoshimura for all of their support of the Vital MX post-race show. Running through 250s, what stands out to you? What do you want to talk about?
I gotta give a nod to Burdone. Again, for just being such a random pickup from Bar X last year. First main wasn't good. Super competitive in main 2 or 3. Just kind of weird one. I always think of his career path going forward. I'm just like, I guess he'll be here for a few years hanging around teams like this. I'm curious if anybody will actually want to maybe on a little bit bigger effort want to take a shot at him if he continues the path he is. Joe's first main completely hosed him, of course. Where's he at in the championship now? Like actual points spread. How far out is Joe with that night? Because he'll definitely, his hand will improve a lot during the break.
Yeah, but he'd have to go on a run of wins.
Oh yeah,
and that's
he has to
not
go
happening.
on a run. Where are we at? We are now almost 20 points out of the championship.
I mean, it's closer than I would have thought. So
Yeah.
There is that.
No, excited to see how much he improves during our break. I feel like I'm trying to think. There's not that much of a standout. Again, I get to that kind of 9th on back. Like good for Parker Ross, Lux Turner, a couple of them, but man, there's a lot of guys out and just some odd results back there.
I demand more from Gavin Towers.
Trust me, people do. Yes.
I've heard a lot of this is good for Gavin Towers, and I'm like, no,
this is not good. This isn't that deep of a field. I guess he's whatever he got in that big pileup. Oh, by the way, replaying the first race, that pileup, when Juju went down, in person, it was very quick. I was rewatching, and I'm like, how did the leader go down? And it collected so many people from like 5th and 6th on back, like people that had enough time to make a move to not hit him. That was one of the bigger pileups.
No one knows.
So weird. Towers was caught up in that. And I guess he was coughing up blood after the race and may have hit his head and wasn't all there. So he sat out the rest of the night, but definitely a very, very rough start to this. And again, just a lot of people kind of question after put all that effort into him. There was flashes in the futures that were good, but also a lot of crashes. And so far the speed is not there that was there during futures. It's not going so great.
No, agreed. Anything else on your mind?
No, did you guys any comments on the futures race? Anything surprising there for you?
My
or no?
only
Or sorry,
comment,
SMX Next.
yes, that's
Sorry,
my only
not-
comment is it's not called Futures.
Yeah, SMX Next. You changed
Honestly,
the name.
I have 0 comments on SMX Next.
Sure.
0. So if you want to say something, feel free, but I have 0.
Not much other than, again, I want to know if when you ride for Star in their future, or now let's call it SMX Next program, if there's a voice of Bobby Reagan on the start saying, boy, you better not mess this up, because Jesus Christ, our guys struggle in futures a bit. SMX Next.
that
I
is
saw
bizarre.
Dudney, like, I would see Dudney get fixed, and I'm like, how's he now 40 seconds off the field again? Just like, he'd make it 4 corners and crash, make it 4 corners and crash, make it 4 corners and crash. They red flagged it for Fapani. I guess he was completely out cold in it, backboarding him. Beeks texted me just a concussion, so that's good because he was down for a while and we had to red flag that race. But yeah, it's kind of weird. I don't mean this against the kids for this being the pathway. I know a lot of kids are hurt, but it's knowing some of the top names in amateurs at times. Like I look at the list and good for Evan, the guys that did well, or sorry, Landon. It's a little bit of a lighter list than I expected. Like if you follow amateur racing, there's still a decent amount of kids missing. Kids get hurt. Like they kind of wanted to condense the schedule this year with SMXX, was starting later into the season and ending earlier to try to eliminate how long the kids were maybe on Supercross, having to focus on it. But it still turned out where we're kind of missing some of the names in the field. That's about it.
Okay, so we're done?
Yep.
Good. I am exhausted. Thank you to Decal Works, Fox Racing, Yamaha Motor USA, and Yoshimura for their support of the Vital MX post-race show. If you have anything you'd like to see, like us to talk about, got any comments, concerns, questions, let us know, and we can tackle those next week when we return to recap round 1 of 250SX East and round 5 of 450SX. Tampa is sure to be another thrilling round of Monster Energy AMA Supercross. And of course, stay tuned to Vital MX, because when we find out what has happened to Jett Lawrence, then it will be shared as soon as possible. But for now, we will see you next week on another episode of the Vital MX post-race show. Thanks for listening.